I would like to do, I don't really know how to promote this, but I'd like to show this to other churches that are interested in this kind of thing, and because I really, really think we have fallen down on subjects just like this. And I appreciate Shirley's, her website, and she's very involved in things like this. And I think one of the reasons we're in the toilet we're in right now is because we've just sat back and let the country go, and then gripe about who gets elected. You know, that's the way we do things. We just gripe about who did get there. Yes, ma'am. Oh yeah, you could do. I didn't think of that. Okay, we could do that. Uh, I think I have shown it at Kiwanis. Yes, ma'am. I've been to several churches. Well, let's take a look at this, and I have put an abundance of information on each slide because I don't trust my memory to remember everything. There's a ton of material that's involved in this. But what is socialism exactly? And I'm going to read this to you. It's an economic and political philosophy that encompasses some diverse economic and social systems characterized by social ownership, community ownership of the means of production and distribution as opposed to private ownership and free enterprise. Karl Marx hated private property. That was his hatred in life. And so in Marx's theory, socialism, it's a transitional state. You don't stay at socialism. Socialism is the door that opens to communism. And it is the overthrow and the first victim in like Venezuela and in China and nations like that. It's the overthrow of capitalism, the realization of ultimately communism, but socialism is the first stage. So Bernie Sanders is a socialist. We have socialist members of Congress, okay? Barack Obama was a socialist and still is a socialist. So should we as Christians be interested in knowing what we're dealing with, and should we be interested in doing what we can to stop it? Because our kids are at risk. And if our kids are at risk, our future is at risk, okay? So, Karl Marx, the sort of the beating heart of socialism, basically, here's what Karl Marx believed, and he believed this till the day he died. It's called the Hegelian dialectic, and what that is, you have a thesis, and the thesis is the way things are. Then you have the antithesis, or the opposite of that, which is that is the way. That's the evolving form of your final synthesis. And the synthesis is the new thesis. And in a few years, guess what's going to happen? The synthesis and so it just cycles. This never works. But Marx, I suppose, didn't live long enough to see that this did not work. And so he claimed that feudalism, and here was his idea, feudalism was replaced by capitalism. So there's your thesis. Your antithesis, which would be replaced by socialism and ultimately communism in an irreversible order. And so he was telling us feudalism, back in the days when we had a feudalistic system here in the United States, that got done away with, and then capitalism comes in, and da-da-da-da-da. So this was what his idea was. So, yeah, you work for the owner, the landowner. So 200 years after the publication of the Communist Manifesto, capitalism is the main economic system in the world today. Socialism is not. And I'll give you one reason why socialism is not the main form of economy in the world. It don't work. That's exactly. It never works. It has never, ever worked. All right? So, our challenge, tell the truth, all the truth, about socialism, which was a pseudo-religion based in pseudo-science, and it was enforced by political might and, if necessary, a rifle. So, it was a God that failed, and it was a science that never was. This has never been scientific. All right? Winston Churchill said, socialism is a philosophy of failure the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal sharing of misery. And that's exactly right. He was a pretty sharp old guy. So, should we study these types of subjects in church? Do you think this is out of bounds? I don't think it's out of bounds at all. And are they related to the Bible? Does the Bible have anything to say about socialism? Yes. Yes, it does. And so I think we need to be concerned about what happens in our government, because what happens in our government is going to impact your home. It's going to impact our economy. It's going to impact our schools, and everything is going to be impacted by that. All right? So if you're still undecided about this, 26% of Americans support the gradual elimination of capitalism in favor of a more socialistic system. Now that's 31% of Gen Z, 35% of millennials believe that, 30% of Gen Z has a favorable view of Marxism. Now this is up 6% from 2019. 12% of Gen Z and 10% of millennials think America would be better off if all private property was abolished and held by the government. Now that's communism, okay? Socialism is when the community holds it. Communism is ultimately when the government owns your property. And most people, and this has happened historically, most people aren't going to willingly give up their property and their home and their business. But the government has a way of getting you to change your mind. Yep. These are punk kids, basically. Because I'm going to give you the ages here. Now, Gen Z, born between 97 and 2012. That's Generation Z. Then you've got the millennials born between 81 and 96. And so, my question is, where did these kids learn and become so convinced that socialism is the way we should build our country? Well, somebody turn to Exodus 20 and read verses 15 and 17. Somebody else get Ephesians 4:28, and somebody else get 2 Thessalonians 3:10. And whoever gets either of those, just start reading. Tell me which one you got. So what kind of a system does that? Socialism does that. They will steal your property. They will steal everything. All right, who's got Ephesians 4:28? Okay. I know what you're thinking. Okay. Work, labor. All right, who's got 2 Thessalonians 3:10? Anybody have that one? Okay. Boom. Okay. Socialism says, no, we all own everything. Everybody has equal access and equal rights, even if you didn't help produce it. You remember what Barack Obama said to the country, basically, about private businesses? He said, you didn't build that. You did not build that. The community did that. The community paved the roads, and the community built the septic systems, and the community. That's not yours. That was a socialist statement that he made. All right? So, free enterprise, it's a foundational economic principle found in the Bible. You keep what you earn. If you don't work, you don't eat. And so we're talking about some capitalistic platforms here. Socialism attempts to confiscate the assets of workers and distribute them among non-workers. This is what the French Revolution was all about. I've heard people say, well, the French Revolution and the American Revolution is the same thing. Oh, please. Not even close. The French Revolution was about, let's take everything from the wealthy, divide it by the number of people, and give it to them. All right? And we've never had a revolution like that. The American Revolution was completely different. And so if a person is lazy and will not work, then they should not have the benefit of eating. All right? Now, in 2022, 54% of American households headed by immigrants used one or more major welfare programs compared to 39% for U.S.-born households. In 2022, 1 in 3 Americans, that's about 100 million, participated in at least one government assistance program. In 2023, welfare spending accounted for 14% of the federal budget. The average monthly benefit for SNAP, that's food stamps, was $231 per person. The average poor family with children received about $65,200 in government benefits and resources annually. Now, historian Lee Edwards said, socialism has never exceeded anywhere, including the Marxism-Leninism of the Soviet Union, the National Socialism of Nazi Germany, the Maoism of Communist China, the Chavez-Maduro socialism of Venezuela. It has never come close anywhere to Marx's ideal of a classless society. The idea of Marxism, no, there is no upper class, middle class, lower class. All that's going to be destroyed. Everybody's just going to be class. There will be no classes based on your assets or your income production. Now, this is from their mouths. Bernie Sanders, who is an independent from Vermont, he is an avowed socialist. He is a progressive. So is Elizabeth Warren, who is a Democrat from Massachusetts. They want to, what they call, democratize. They want to democratize private business, and I'll give you one guess as to what that means. They want to do that to private business. They want to provide universal, which means free health care and free education, but they ignore the $1 trillion price tag and the confiscation of private property that will be required to produce these things. All right? Then, Representative Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who is a Democrat from New York, and she is also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, and they support government ownership of industries that are viewed as necessities. Railroads, coal mines, social media. Anything that oils the gears of society, they think the government ought to own that. Yeah, that's got too much stuff in here. So the DSA says, to the greatest extent possible, government should democratize private business and give control of them to workers. So socialism, which is one of the leading members of DSA, their national steering committee, said this, quote, is the democratization of all areas of life, including your kids, our grandkids, all the businesses, the government would own them, and then the government would decide how much money that they're going to give you based on that. All right? They own it. They own it. Now, this is not a conspiracy. What we're talking about tonight this is not just some preacher blabbing or, Christians shooting their mouth off. Government-run public education is a co-conspirator in destroying Western American culture, individual liberty, and capitalism. Now, that's a strong statement, but I'm telling you that's exactly what government-run education wants to do. Yeah, we're not blowing smoke here. So it trains our children to become leftist cultural warriors by engineering them to become anti-American Marxist ideologues. And so those statements, they're strong, but they are provable tenets of one Mr. John Dewey. You ever heard of John Dewey? He was the father of modern American education, progressive education in the United States. That's what he wanted. So the 2020 program for International Student Assessment, which was PISA, compared American students to nearly 80 countries worldwide and their education systems. The critical comparison was with China. That's the most dangerous adversary that we have right now, economically and militarily. China outpaced U.S. 15-year-olds in the three areas of student performance: reading, literacy, math, and science. They whipped us, and there's a reason for that. In reading literacy, we scored 505, China scored 555. In math, we scored 478, China scored 591. In science, we scored 502, China scored 590. And one of the reasons for this is progressive education does not necessarily put any emphasis at all on academic subjects. And I'm going to give you a list of their critical areas of study, and it almost make you laugh, really. So, federal and state governments, now this is on our school system, spend $720 billion annually on K through 12 public education, or $14,400 for each of the 50 million students in government schools. There are at least 44 million American adults who are functionally illiterate. They can't read or write simple English sentences. 44 million. And many of these, I can't say every one of them, but many of these graduated from government schools. And we've got people, Stacy can tell you, there are kids in her classes. She's not a teacher, but they can't read, right? And they should be able to. And they don't hold them back. They pass them on to the next grade. And can't, wow. Good for her. Well, I hope she wins big. All right. Now, in 1988, this is not a new problem. In 1988, only 5% of American high school seniors could read well enough to understand the U.S. Constitution. That is not accidental, by the way. In 2019, the National Assessment Education Progress published the nation's report card. Testing 600,000 students from every state, they found a drop in reading ability. On average, reading scores declined for 4th and 8th graders. These kids cannot read. They're not being taught to read. Really? Everybody falls, yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, babe. Peggy Carr is the Associate Commissioner of the National Center for Education Statistics, and she said this, quote, "Over the past decade, there has been no progress in either mathematics or reading performance, and the lowest performing students are doing worse. They're not doing this, we're doing this." Do what?
Nutrition.
Oh. Maybe a little, but that's we're not talking about nutritional deficiency here. We're talking about moral deficiency. President Reagan was shocked over the state of American education, and he commissioned a study about the school system, and the final report began with this sentence: "We're a nation at risk." This is part of the report. If an unfriendly foreign power had attempted to impose on America the mediocre educational performance that exists today, we might well have viewed it as an act of war. As it stands, we have allowed this to happen to ourselves, end quote. So, we're looking at indoctrination, not education. That is not the goal of government education. So a lot of the government schooling from K to 12, and especially at the collegiate level, this is horrifying at the collegiate level, folks. It is not preparing students academically to compete in the marketplace. It puts a lot of effort on what they call basically the indoctrination of the students regarding leftist thinking. And they're doing a really good job at this. Socially engineering them to reject the traditional Judeo-Christian ethic on which the nation was founded. What we in here, what you teach your kids, is the antithesis of what the government schools want them to know. And so what they're going to do is try to delete that. You go to a public university, and these places are bastions of liberalism. And the first thing they want to try to do is erase from this child's mind any bastion at all of biblical morality and belief in God. Very, right, yeah, this is not 10 out of 10 teachers, thank God for that. Just to regurgitate this. And so basically Western society and Western culture and values are being attacked by our own education system, and we've allowed that to happen. All right? Let's look at, everybody probably familiar with this young lady. I love Candace Owens. She said, conservative author, back up. Go forward. All right. Stop, back up. Nope, back. Okay. She said the left-wing leaders of our education establishment are replacing education with indoctrination. Now, she goes on to say, if we continue to allow the Democrat Party to control education, we are guaranteeing them the future because the youth is the future. Public school is actually failing kids, especially black kids. Evidence? In California, now this is Candace Owens, in California, 75% of black boys cannot pass a basic literacy exam. You will never hear BLM talk about that. In Baltimore, they tested 5 schools. They could not find not one child, that was proficient in reading, writing, and math. That's criminal, I'm just telling you. With all the money that is spent educating these kids, that is absolutely criminal. Anyway, so how did this happen? How did America's public schools, it started off with a Bible-based curriculum. If you look back at the founding, the textbooks, they had Bible verses, A for Adam and B for, it was incredible. And so my question is, where did this start? How did this get here? Well, school, I'm talking about government school, has become a revolutionary tool to reshape and to reweave the moral fabric of these kids and to teach them to reject the traditional Christian values of the home and the nation. So we're trying to erase, we're pulling down statues. We're trying to erase like it never happened and to replace that with other ideology. And so revolution is the key. And you might say, well, revolution against what? Everything. Everything. That's it. That's it. We've got to get rid of the old so the new can start to grow and develop, and then that will eventually become the new synthesis, is exactly what Karl Marx had in mind. Everything, yep. 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 That's a long time ago. Yep. Give for you. Over 100 years ago, progressives started to trash our public school system here, and they adopted a philosophy and even methods that moved these young kids away from studying academic subjects, all right? Math, reading, language, things like that. And the emphasis was put on non-academic life skills. They focused on the whole child, okay? And the data shows that this absolutely failed, all right? It fell in the toilet. So here's Andrew Bernstein, who works at the City University of New York. In 2018, in an article, Heroes and Villains, he exposed this progressive malfeasance regarding our educational system. Early progressives, I'm talking about John Dewey and that group, they pushed to distance public education from academics. Can you explain that to me? Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, if all you want a child to do is to be a public worker on the government farm, he doesn't need to know math and science. All he's got to do is push that button to get the wheels started on the plow. And so these things were replaced with activities better suited for students' future work on farms or in factories. All right. Again, this is what they're saying. Jane Addams wrote. She was born in 1860 and died in 1935. We are impatient with schools which lay stress on reading and writing. We're getting a little impatient with this. And you're scratching your head. This is an educator? This is an indoctrinator. All right? She went on to say this. We are suspecting the schools to rest upon the assumption that all knowledge and interest must be brought to the children through the medium of books. We're afraid they want these kids to read and to learn things academically about history and science and things like that. So, what are they going to read? Oh, I'm fixing to show you. I'm fixing to show you. Progressives made another major change to public education with the introduction of what they call curriculum studies. And historian Diane Ravitch wrote about this subject of curriculum studies. She says the invention of the scientific curriculum expert represented an extraordinary shift in power away from teachers, parents, and local communities to professional experts. In modern school districts, control over curriculum was transferred from educators who majored in these academic subjects, English, history, and math, to trained curriculum specialists, okay? So, this was a progressive victory when that happened. And this social engineering approach brought these people closer to the heart of America because, who was it? Joseph Stalin said, give me your kids for 7 years and you'll never get them back. The goal of progressive education is to train the child to benefit society as a whole to become a government-trained worker. All right? So that is the goal. Now, I'll read this. The U.S. Bureau of Education partnered with the NEA, National Education Association, to call for a revamping of American schools, and this spawned what was known as the Commission on the Reorganization of Secondary Education, or CRSE. And that commission issued cardinal principles of secondary education. This was in 1918 that this was done. And they're still very much part of American education today. So what exactly did the CRSE order schools to do with regards that we're not going to teach them academic subjects, but we need to teach them things that will develop the whole child. And here's the whole child. What were some of these cardinal principles? All right. Number one, personal hygiene. We can't read, but we smell good. We're going to brush our teeth, but we can't add 2 and 2. Love for clean sport. Command of fundamental processes. Worthy home membership. In other words, rules for proper family management. Boy, I want the government telling my kids how to behave in a family situation. Vocation. In other words, blue-collar employment skills. Civics. We studied history. We studied AVC, Americanism versus communism. That got thrown out. We no longer study history like that. We've replaced it with civics. Then, worthy use of leisure. Get on your phone. Get on your iPad. This is the new worth. Then ethical character, which is government-run moral training. Mike Shotwell. I would encourage all of you to get this book right here. It's called Give Me Liberty, Not Marxism. And it was written by Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis. And let me read you what Mike Shotwell said about this matter. The Frankfurt School, I'll give you more information about that in a minute, morphed from the Goethe University in Frankfurt, Germany, under the name the Institute for Social Research, to embrace the goal of developing Marxist studies. However, the school's true research was not focused on violent revolution vis-a-vis Marxism, but on destroying Western civilization through other means. A major tenet of the Frankfurt School's philosophy, developed by George Lukács, Adorno Fromm, William Reich, and others, was the sinister belief that unrestrained sex could be used as a devastating instrument if prompted to run rampant. They promoted compulsory promiscuity, one-parent households, premarital sex, and homosexuality, which struck at the heart of the core values of family and childbearing as mainstays of Western society. We are giving condoms to elementary kids, as many as they want, free of charge. So, whoop. So, all right, it's coming back on. Y'all are probably aware of all this stuff that we've been going over, but to see it amalgamated is just like that. Not in the United States. Oh yeah. Are you? It took me several weeks. It's a great read. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's like 400 pages, but it's worth your time. So, the goal behind these principles, historian Ravitch explained, the driving purpose behind the 8 objectives, which I just read to you, was socialization, teaching students to fit into society. The overriding goal was social efficiency, not the realization of individual desire for self-improvement. We want them to fit into the machine, but not be outstanding individuals. So the U.S. government stripped academic pursuits from the core of the nation's schooling, and these were to become an afterthought. So the cardinal principle of progressive learning is that independent thinking is useless to society, even dangerous. That blows my mind that they would say that. John Dewey, who was the founder of progressive education, wrote his PhD thesis on German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who was an 18th century German philosopher. He was a Central Enlightenment thinker. He was one of the leaders in the progressive socialism, all right? And John Dewey wrote his thesis on this guy, who was the father of American education. And here's what Dewey said of progressive education goals. The mere absorbing of facts and truths is so exclusively an individual affair that it tends very naturally to pass into selfishness. There is no obvious motive for the acquirement of mere learning. There is no clear social gain in success thereat. That's insanity. Absolute insanity. By the way, was it the community that invented the telephone, right? It was the community that invented, all these things. No, individuals that were independent thinkers, and thank God for them. Yeah. Nothing individual, right? Education is dangerous to the socialist. Now here is the Marxist philosophy of learning. Socialist education aims to prepare the student to simply become a cooperative, government-trained cog in the social machine. That's what this is all about. So, an educated, independent thinking person is a danger to the end goal of a socialist educator. William Hurd Kilpatrick, who was a chairman of the CRSE Committee on Math, he argued for severely curtailing math instruction for all but future scientists and engineers. If you're not going to use it as a business model or to help culture, you don't need to know it. All right. You go over here. Yep. That's exactly what that is.
That third point that you had up there, the individual thinkers, that's why Democrats don't like Trump.
Yep.
Because that's exactly what he is.
He is. He sure is. So, all right, let's go to this one. Kilpatrick and Dewey visited the Soviet Union. They came away incredibly impressed. And they were bragging about Russia's successful educational system. And in 1929 now, Kilpatrick said of Stalin's Russia, no school system in history has been more thoroughly and consistently made to work in the social and political program of the state, end quote. And then they brought this mess over here to the United States. In 1929, John Dewey visited the Soviet Union. He was, quote, deeply moved by what he saw. He explained, quote, the goals of the progressive school were undermined by the egoistic and private ideals and methods inculcated by the institution of private property, profit, and acquisition of possession. Those are just horrible things. Dewey praised the communists for changing the institution of the family, which he considered pernicious to communal living. The family. All right? The nuclear family was a bad thing. So, teenagers leave high school marginally prepared academically, very ripe for radicalism. They are likely to embrace atheism, which is a foundational theory of evolution, and Marxist materialism, and this Frankfurt School of Marxists and Howard Zinn. This is one of the more popular history books in high schools today, all right? Written by Howard Zinn, A People's History of the United States. It is full of inaccuracies. But the other books have been thrown out. This book has been put in, so our kids are reading, but look what they're reading. And so they struggle to think for themselves. They know very little about their country. You ask a kid, what is the Declaration of Independence? I don't know. What the U.S. Constitution? What do you know about the U.S. Constitution? They don't know anything about the U.S. Constitution. They haven't been taught those things. I think we might make it. So an overwhelming number of university professors lean really hard left. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But a study in Econ Journal Watch found the status of professors of history and social science at 40 leading universities here in the country. They checked their voter preference and registration, and Democrats or liberals overwhelmed Republican conservatives by 35-1. What do you think they're teaching? All right? Yes, sir. Okay. Yeah. Communist China has invested heavily in the U.S. education system, according to a Washington Free Beacon review of federal records. And these investments influence university decisions specifically concerning how they talk about China. Don't say we're bad. Don't say we've killed millions of people. Don't do that. And here's some hush money, which is exactly what is going on there. And so a lot of universities, these faculty members, they endorse action by the CCP, which is the Chinese Communist Party. They're very much behind it. So the Chinese are taking out a lot of our major universities with regards to their position on socialism and communism. Don't teach that. We'll cut your funding. You won't get any more money. They're buying farmland over here. It's incredible how much property China owns in the United States. John Dewey helped bring the Frankfurt School of Marxists to the United States. He was one of the main importers of this stuff. And their ideology has significantly influenced liberal arts and colleges and the very essence of academic freedom here in our country. A University of Pennsylvania historian says the most influential books for the humanities in the United States academe today were written by acknowledged, confessed Marxists. And these are the books that are used to teach in our colleges and universities. And here are, I'm not just going to throw this out without giving you the information. There's Gramsci's prison notebooks. There's Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth. These have been named the most influential books for humanities in the U.S. academia, and these guys are socialists. But we're using their books more than any other book. And so Gramsci was an Italian Marxist, and Freire was a Brazilian theorist who agreed wholeheartedly with Mao Zedong, the communist murderer, Chinese communist murderer. David Horowitz and Jacob Laskin identified 150 leftist courses offered at 12 universities that closely resemble political courses that are mandatory in communist nations. Their book, One Party Classroom, How Radical Professors at America's Top Colleges Indoctrinate Students and Undermine Our Democracy, cites a number of these classes. In community studies at the University of California at Santa Cruz, this statement prefaced one of these classes. The goal of this seminar is to learn how to organize a revolution. We will learn what communities, past and present, have done and are doing to resist, challenge, and overcome systems of power, including, but not limited to, global capitalism, state oppression, and racism. Now, this stuff, what it does, it divides people. It divides blacks from whites, men from women, gays from straights. You know what I'm saying? There's always something to split, always something to divide, and it creates a real disharmonious situation in the country. So, we're under assault. Schools are the training camps. I'm just telling you. This is where these kids learn this stuff. And teachers and professors specifically are drill instructors. And these kids are just raw recruits that are being shaped to think and hopefully pray that the Department of Education gets... We need to pray for that. Our country, we're being fundamentally transformed. And you remember again what Barack Obama said? We are going to fundamentally transform America. We don't need to be fundamentally transformed. We need to go back to our founding documents and incorporate those in the way we live life and in the way we make our decisions in courts. And so we really need to lift our nation to the Lord. We really need to pray for America. Ground Zero, Jimmy Carter, who, by the way, at his funeral, did you hear the song they sang at Jimmy Carter's funeral? Imagine, by John Lennon. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. And I'm like, really? And the guy was supposed to be yeah. But on October the 17th, 1979, he established the Department of Education. And it has over 4,000 employees. It costs taxpayers billions of dollars. Specifically, there are more than 1,000 Department of Education employees that are paid more than $160,000 annually. There are nearly 90 that make over $200,000 annually, 4 times the average starting teacher salary. And this is the kind of stuff they're vomiting out on our educational system, this Marxist socialist stuff. Now, this is one last chart that I want to show you. And what this is, it will show the year, the percent of local funding for schools, and SAT scores. Really interesting. In 1960, for instance, where's my little, right here. 1960, 60%, and I never could get these to line up, by the way. That's local funding, and I couldn't get it to get right over. If anybody knows how to do that, let me know. Anyway, 60% of school systems were locally funded. Here was SAT score, average SAT score. 1963, it dropped a little bit. Well, look at here, 983, it bumped a little bit. 1966, 55% was locally funded, 967. 1970, 52.9%, 948. 1976, 46% was locally funded, 903. And just look down through there, and we dropped when local school boards and local communities lose control of their schools, their kids suffer. The more we have control of our local schools, the better those schools perform. And so one of the things that Trump said he was going to do is do away with the Department of Education, and I pray that happens, because that is just, it's a big hole in the floor where we're just pouring a bunch of money, not getting anything out of it. So our greatest goal, pray for the country, pray for our leaders, pray for our teachers and our professors, pray for churches. This is a particular burden for me. Pray for churches to wake up. And I mean sound off about the distancing of our society, not just our schools, but our society from biblical standards from the pulpit and the pew. Preachers need to be shouting this stuff from the rooftop. But we're kind of like, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't want to be, well, really? I think we need to wake up. So, thank you for your time. It's not even 7 o'clock. I thought we'd have to divide this into two sections. Well, thank you all for being the kind of people that are interested in this, because this is not welcome in a lot of churches. And so I just want to say thank you for being here and doing that. All right. Yes, sir? Thank you much. I appreciate it. I enjoy putting this stuff together. It takes a long time, but this is one of the things I really, really enjoy doing. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's where the basics is.
Yep.
Basics of family.
Well, I remember Hillary Clinton saying it takes a village to raise a child. No, it doesn't. It takes a godly mom and dad to raise a child. Get your hands off my kids. You know. Yeah. Mom and dad. Both of those are absolutely necessary. All right.
Several things that Obama said. One of the very first things he said as president, this is not a Christian nation.
Yep. I remember that.
That's one of the very first things he told me.
I remember him saying that.
I didn't have to. They would start raising their hand and telling me about it. They would just, the kids basically did. They knew it.
They knew it. I'm afraid you're right.
Well, Van,
I'm afraid you're right.
teacher, and that was in his textbook, but he always gets over that chapter.
Good. Next chapter. Next chapter. Good for Vance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Yes, ma'am. Ah, good. He was an atheist, really? Wow. Well, good for Eric. I'm not surprised a bit about that. Good, good, good. All right. Well, thank y'all. Lord willing, we will see you Sunday morning, 8 o'clock, back in the back. Y'all bring you breakfast stuff, and we'll have breakfast back there and then come out for our service and dismiss early, and y'all go spend the day. And then we will be back Sunday night at 6 o'clock. So it's good to see you. And thank y'all for driving 45 minutes to be here tonight. I appreciate it very much. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for your goodness. Thank you for our nation. And, Lord, I pray that you forgive us. We've walked away from fundamentals. We have tried to create a recipe of morality of our own, but it's all poison. And I pray that you would just touch the hearts of people that are in charge of government and education and churches and culture. Lord, we want to come back to exactly where you want us to be. I thank you for these who are here tonight. Bless us, watch over us, protect us, make us living translations of the truths of your word. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you all for being here.